Hi everyone, welcome back to Total War Therapy, and today we're gonna talk about the 6 different categories of cavalry and how to use them in the battlefield. So don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy my video, and let's begin. The first category we're gonna address, and probably the most common in the game, is the shock cavalry. Now, when I started to play Total War Warhammer, I was just sending my cavalry units against the enemy troops, and I was witnessing them falling down very quickly. That is because I was using them in the wrong way. The shock cavalry is supposed to charge and psycho-charge the enemy from multiple directions when the enemy is, in most of cases, distracted. So, you don't have to use them to attack in melee, to stay in prolonged combat, to get stuck in the enemy formation. You have to wait the enemy army, the enemy troops, to engage with your infantry, with your front line, for example, and then side the enemy, flank them, reach their back, and hit with all your charge and all the speed the shoulders, the back of your enemies. The charge bonus is in short a multiplier of the damage, so they don't need to have excellent melee attack and melee defense and weapon strength, because all their stats will be increased by this charge bonus, and you have to charge. Wait 10-20 seconds, engage in melee, and then retreat, withdraw your cavalry units, and then charge again. You can hit the flanks and the back, because in that case the damage will be even more compared to when you hit in the front. In some circumstances, of course, the charge bonus and the mass and everything of your cavalry unit is that strong that you can definitely even charge at the front, and your monstrous charge will hit and will throw away the enemy. When the hit of your charge will be that hard, you will probably cause a psychological effect on your enemies, because when they sustain a very big damage, they will start to wavering, to routing, so you don't even need to still attack them, but you can just retreat and psycho-charge another unit of your enemy army. If you do everything correctly, you will see that a single unit of cavalry can be the game changer of your battle, can destroy an entire army by itself, while the rest of your infantry, for example, can just distract the enemy. The second category is what we can call a melee cavalry. In this case, the charge bonus is not their best attribute, but they have increased melee attack and melee defense, especially the defense. So, you don't need to psycho-charge the enemy to hit only the flanks or the back of your enemy troops, but you can let them engage in melee combat even for a prolonged time, because since they have a better defense and overall better melee stats, they will be more resilient. Of course, you can still use them to psycho-charge the enemy, but as I said, this is not the proper way, and they will not be that efficient, that shock, like the shock cavalry itself. In short, the melee cavalry is like a very fast infantry. Of course, they are not that excellent in the prolonged fight like an infantry unit, but they can be more versatile. You can attack the missile units that are at the back of your enemy front line, you can hit artillery or other cavalry that they will have lesser melee stats, since they can focus more on the charge bonus. So, if you have to send a unit of melee cavalry against a unit of shock cavalry, the melee cavalry will probably win. They require, of course, less management, because if they get stuck in melee, that will not be such a big problem. They can just stand still, and at the proper time they can find a way to charge again or address another unit. The third category we're gonna talk about is the missile cavalry. The missile cavalry has the worst melee stats amongst all the kinds of cavalry. They have almost no charge, their melee defense and melee attack is very low, and their weapon strength is very weak, but they compensate with their missile attack. Now, compared to the missile infantry or artillery, they are probably even the worst missile units, but you can use their versatility, their flexibility, because they are very fast compared to the other categories of cavalry, so they can move around undisturbed, Probably all the other cavalry in the game of your enemy will struggle to reach them, but you have to be careful in any case. You can put the skirmish mode on them that honestly is not working that well in the late times after the last patches, but you can, I mean, they require not that much of management, because putting the skirmish mode, they will keep a distance between them and the enemy, and you know, keeping far, they will keep shooting at your enemies, and even if their missile strength is a little weak, they will have a longer time to deal damage to them. You can even use them just to distract the enemy troops. If your opponent has a bigger army than yours, you can use them, you know, to take the attention of part of them and bring somewhere else, while your main army will focus its attention on just one part of the enemy army. In any case, always give them a look, because you can never know. They are very weak, they have no armor in most of cases, and if engaged, if the enemy will manage to reach them, they will fall down very soon. The fourth category is what we can call the Predator's Anti-Large Cavalry, and this is my favorite category. I will explain you why. When you are playing both defensively or offensively, you will see that normally there is your front line approaching the enemy front line or the contrary, and your flankers, your flanking unit, approaching the flanking units of your enemy. That flanking unit of your enemy, they will be probably other cavalry, so you may need a cavalry specialized against other cavalry, and these units are the best. They are fast, they have better melee stats than overall cavalry, and they can attack and win the fight against other cavalry of your enemy. They're still versatile, so you can use them to charge your enemy infantry or some big monsters, some cavalry with a mount especially, and yes, they are good at any circumstances. That's why for me they have no weaknesses. Of course, if you need a cavalry specialized in something else like the shock or to distract with the missile attack, you can use different options, but you have to choose amongst all the cavalry. These are probably the best, because they can take care of other cavalry, of monsters, and still of infantry, cavalry. I mean, they're excellent at everything. Now it's time to talk about the Monstrous Cavalry. The Monstrous Cavalry is actually a miscellaneous category that can cross all the categories that we previously talked about. So they can be shock cavalry, so specialize in the charge, or melee cavalry, so specialize more to be resilient in the engaged combat, or they can have a missile attack. Probably there is no Monstrous Cavalry with a missile attack, but it could be nice to have one of them in the game. Now, the Monstrous Cavalry has we have to make some consideration about them, because it's true that they are kinda an enhanced, an improved kind of cavalry, but they have many weaknesses. For example, they are few entities, and even if their damage will be overall probably stronger than all the other cavalry, this can be a problem, because if they are addressed by a character, for example, character cannot have the biggest splash attack, but that big weapon strength will be focused on a few entities, and your Monstrous Cavalry have few entities, so they will be attacked, and probably they will sustain a bigger damage against a character. They have a huge mass, and this is a strength because they can move more freely around the battlefield. If they are stuck in an enemy formation, it will be easy to them to elude and to escape that trap. At the same time, they are uneasy targets because they are very big. So if there is a missile infantry unit that is focusing his fire on you, that can be a problem. They will go down more easily than the other cavalry that we talk about, just because, as I said, they are bigger. So they are probably they are definitely the strongest cavalry in all the game, but you have to be careful about them. Probably they don't have to be your front line, you don't have to attack directly with them, even if they are very powerful. You have just, to sneak around and be careful of all the various situations, because yeah, they are powerful, but they are vulnerable too. The last category we're gonna talk about is the Flying Cavalry. That, like the Monstrous Cavalry, is a miscellaneous category that can cross all the other cavalry that we already talked about, so they can have a missile attack, they can be more specialized in charging or in their melee stats. But in any case, there are some strengths and some weaknesses that you have to take into consideration. The strengths is that first they can fly, and this is a huge advantage, for example in siege battles, when you can attack the infantry on the wall, the missile infantry that is firing from the wall, or you can just bypass the wall and attack some maybe some towers or some artillery that is deployed inside the fortress. So you can just you know, you don't have to care about the terrain, about if there is the front line covering some other enemy units, so you can just bypass everything and decide where to attack and when. At the same time, they are very fast, so they will elude most of missile attack. I mean, they can just, you know, fly away very easily and move around, so they don't have to worry about their defense, and if they are in any trouble, they can just fly over. And I mean, in general, they're very elusive. The weaknesses is that they are very expensive. They are amongst the most expensive units in the game, and they are weaker than the grounded cavalry. So normally, generally, if you have to engage against another cavalry of the same tier, they will probably lose the fight. And yeah, generally they are not that strong like other cavalries we talk about, because they sacrifice a little of armor, melee stats to get the flying attribute. So they require a little of management. You have to be very careful about them, but if you use them correctly, they can be their jolly card and makes the difference into the battlefield. Thank you for enjoying the time with me, and let's see very soon.